Welcome to Support Life, a program focusing on current social issues from a life-affirming perspective. I'm Gavin Baulch and my guest is Lisa Brick from Loving for Life Victoria. Welcome to the program.
Thank you, Gavin.
Okay, now I love the term loving for life.
Thank you, yes.
We'll come back to that in a moment. How was life for you? Where to begin?
I'm a Melbourne girl, love Melbourne, grew up and born here, went southeastern suburbs, around Mount Waverley Way. I went to school locally, local Catholic school, girls' school, met my husband there at the ripe old age of 15 at a youth group, but we married. We didn't marry, and I didn't start dating him until a bit later, but we married when I was 21. And I've had the privilege of moving around Australia a bit, lived some time in Perth, lived some time in the country, but came back to Melbourne.
Good old Melbourne, the most livable city in the world.
That's right.
Okay. Well, you did training for what?
After I left school, I was trained as a therapy radiographer at RMIT. Always interested in the medical field, and it gave me access to physics and maths. I was a bit of a science freak, and that was really interesting. It was hard work in lots of ways, because you're often dealing with some very difficult things. I worked at Peter MacCallum Hospital, and my job was to treat cancer patients with X-rays. So you're often dealing with quite ill people. Terminal, they've got a lot of regret, sadness, sometimes anger, but it was a very interesting life experience working there.
Okay, so with the traumas that people are faced with, you wouldn't be doing direct counselling, but you would have conversations with some of these folks.
Oh, we did have conversations with some of these folks, and they were good. While life's there, most everyone was very grateful for the life that they had there, and it made you very aware that you wanted to make sure that you could keep yourself as healthy as possible along the way. So that did influence a lot of my decisions as my life went on as well.
Okay, so health, with that we associate the word holistic, right? So we want to look after the skin we live in, or we're trapped in actually. We're trapped in a body, and we want the best for that body. Okay, so did any of the experiences that you have had with Peter MacCallum and the terminally ill, and the chemistry side of things with radiation, X-ray treatment, what did you learn?
It was really interesting actually, because we, while studying to be able to treat people, we've got to do pathology, anatomy and physiology, and one of the most interesting subjects we did was looking at what are some of the outside causes of cancer. We all have predispositions for things, and sometimes there can be triggers that will activate these predispositions. And while I was there, I wasn't at Peter MacCallum for very long, but I was getting engaged, I was going to get married, and so I was starting to think about family planning. And if there was, my mother had always taught natural family planning, and I'm one of four, I've got a brother and two sisters, and so it worked really well for her, and so that was one of the options. But, the hormonal contraceptives, the pill was very much being promoted, and it looks pretty easy actually. So I thought, what am I going to do? But as I was studying, hormonal chemicals, and the contraceptive pill is, full of synthetic hormonals, chemicals, can actually cause cancers. And particularly when I was studying a number of years ago, if you took it for 5 years, then your chances of cancer of the cervix increased by 50%. And cancer of the cervix is already the most common female cancer. It was then. I think now lung cancer has, sadly. And so you're thinking, gee whiz, do I really want to go down that path? Do I want to go down and take these hormonal contraceptives and increase my risk of cancer? Do I want to have more common pap smears? They're not the most pleasant things in the world. I have to think about that. What's going to be best for my health, for my family, for my husband? And if you've ever seen anyone treated particularly with radiotherapy for cancer of the cervix, it's not very pleasant. And so anything you can do to avoid that, I was sort of thinking, So that pushed me towards investigating more natural methods of planning my family.
Okay, now you said that the reason for multiple pap smears is because you may be on the pill for a long time.
Yes, yeah, and we do know that certainly back then that the pill changed the cells that is, into many things that could cause cancer. I won't do the medical terms, and pap smears are great for picking up when those changes start to happen, which is why it's so important that we continue to have them, because to treat a cancer of cervix early is much better than to treat it very late. So
okay, but then young people, young women are taking the pill earlier and earlier, aren't they?
They are in some cases, and it's not always for contraception. Often it's promoted as a skin clearing thing because, when a young person's going through adolescence, their hormone levels are all over the place, and for some young people that causes skin breakouts. But once you're taking a synthetic hormone that has an effect on your whole body system, you don't know what exactly it's going to do to all the other parts of your body.
So we don't know our predisposition.
We don't. You can't tell. Even our genetics, as they say, they can predict a few things, but a full genetic map of all the predispositions is a long, long way off for us. And so, for me, the best thing was to not put into my body things that were likely to send triggers out, whether I knew they were there or not.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so this is information that's really not talked about. I mean, it's such a simple thought. I mean, I heard that the fish in our waterways, because of the urine in the system and then the synthetic hormone chemicals that are being passed from us down the chain, are affecting the sex life of fish.
Well, we can't screen out those synthetic hormones. Like, they're synthetic, they don't belong naturally to the body, and so they're excreted via the urinary system. And all our sewage treatment plants can't take it out. And that was produced and understood, I believe, I'm pretty sure I read in the newspaper, by a German study that showed the increasing estrogens. They talk about estrogens coming in, affecting the waterways, and all the different people that then drink that water, and the water that feeds the ground, which then can put them in, wherever. And so, yes, our environment is being affected by it.
Well, there's a point we might come back to. You're watching Support Life, and we'll be back after the break. Welcome back to Support Life. I'm Gavin Baulch, and my guest is Lisa Brick from Loving for Life Victoria. We talked about this interesting world where there's a relationship between synthetic hormones and human and animal life, and it's getting all mixed up.
It is, yeah.
I guess as young people coming into life, into our reproductive years, we're a bit mixed up too.
They are, actually. And that's in lots of ways how I got to join the Loving for Life team. My interest in these natural methods of family planning led me to become a teacher and start teaching women only the Billings ovulation method. And so I got to talk to a lot of women about their bodies and how they work. And I can't tell you how many times they said, "Oh, if someone had only told me when I was at school, I would have made different choices, I would have understood it more." And so that prompted that discussion of how do we talk to young people about reproduction, about fertility, about what's happening to themselves. And so over the years we've developed a program to help to talk to young people about this, which we offer to schools if they want to have us in to talk to them about them, because our expertise has been in fertility and understanding what fertility is, but you can't just talk about one part of a person.
So sex education in schools generally is really just about the plumbing, isn't it?
Often it can be, sadly. Often, the focus can be just on the plumbing, about, how everything works and what goes where, etc. But it ignores that whole experience that our bodies and how they function affect us, spiritually, emotionally, the whole bit. And so it's very confusing for young people all the way through. So you need to look at it a far more holistic approach.
All right. Now, they've got access to the internet. Why are they so, I haven't heard that before?
The internet, it's a blessing and a curse all at once, the internet. And when it comes to sexuality, the internet is probably more of a curse than a blessing, because, as we know, they tell us that, 11 to 14-year-old boys have universally accessed internet porn at some point in time. Less so for the girls, although there's more of a push for them. But certainly the boys have either come across it accidentally at a friend's, or someone shown them something. And so their information is becoming quite warped at times if they stay in that field and they use that as their education, as to about what sexuality actually is and what their experience is. And then to take that then forward through their maturing years can be quite disabling for them.
All right. So what might be the most important thing on a young person's mind from early teens through? It's not sex, is it?
It's not always. It is. It certainly is high up there. When I'm going into a school to talk about sexuality education, I don't usually get anyone saying, no, I don't want to talk about it. If there's one thing, you've got the kids' attention. And if you do it in a way that respects them as persons and not just as plumbing physical things, you can have some wonderful conversations with them and talk to them about what it is that that they want in life, how to see themselves, what are some of the challenges that they're coming up against.
All right, so what are some of the top goals they might have?
Well, if I'm going into a school and I'll talk to a small group of young people, so about 12, one of the most important things I am going to do is talk to them about goals, particularly if I'm going in with sexuality. I'm talking about goals about their relationships, because we're sexual beings, but we only express that generally with other people in relationship. And so you want to talk to them about what are their expectations. And of course, a lot of them is going to say, oh yeah, I want to, experience lots of different things, whatever. But you go, all right, now, but what about, say when you're 30, what do you expect to be when you're 30? And invariably, not 100%, invariably they're going to say, I want to be married. I want to have some kids. I want to be nice and happy and stable. And we go, great, that's a really good goal to have, It's not for everyone, but, for the vast majority it is. If that's your goal, that's a great goal. How are we going to get there? And so that opens up then the conversation of what is your journey to that goal? What are the things that are going to take you off that goal, to push that, make that goal harder to achieve, take you off target, so to speak? And what are the things and behaviours that are going to help you keep you on target so that you can have that great relationship that you want?
Okay, so now we've got the attention of these young adults in schools. Okay, and let's move to the older person, women, men. You're having conversations with them. Where are they at when they've lacked so much information that you're giving them?
A lot of them, if I've had some wonderful people come and work with us in the schools, and there was one lovely fellow who wanted to share his life experience. He was in his 40s, he'd never married, he'd lived that life of carefree. I don't make commitments, I'll have sexual relations if I want, and whatever. And all of a sudden he reached that point in time in his life where he says, I've got nothing. I'm alone. I've got no prospects, I've got no family. And that was soul searching for him. And he had been raised a Catholic, and that put him on a journey where he returned to his faith, and he suddenly realised what had happened to him. He'd picked up an STI or two across the way, which we don't talk about very often. And he wanted to go back and share that experience with the young people to say, look, it looks very pretty out there, it looks like the high life, but it doesn't always work well. Wow.
So you're able to bring guests into the classroom?
Guests as in, what we'd like to do is to bring, not necessarily guests, but other people to come and work with our young people. We're not all, none of us are perfect. We all have our life stories to say. I myself, I got married young, I remained faithful to my husband, him to me. That's not the experience of everybody. And so, but what we bring in is that, that life-affirming, benefits of thinking about commitment and what does intimacy mean and what does marriage mean.
Okay, so we really are looking at loving for life.
Definitely.
Thank you, Lisa. You're watching Support Life, and we'll be back after the break. Welcome back to Support Life. I'm Gavin Baulch, and my guest is Lisa Brick from Loving for Life Victoria. Lisa, we have covered a lot of topics, but it's mainly to do with lasting, loving, intimate relationships.
Yes.
We want to sustain that.
Yes.
Okay. So when you talk to young people in the classroom today, what are some of their responses?
Young people are wonderful to work with, and it is a real privilege. I'm generally working with around the year 10 age group, and they're wonderfully idealistic, as they should be. You know, you're at that cusp of life, everything is exciting, they're curious, they're open, they want to learn. And they get a lot of mixed messages when it comes to sexuality, and they do appreciate that chance to sit down with someone and just to, you know, belt it out a bit. And it's very funny when you go into schools, because, you know, I'm a mother, I'm a grandmother now as well, I'm very privileged. And the teachers laugh because they say, if we had have said to the boys, say if I'm going to boys, that you'd be talking about this, there's someone who's just like your mother, they would have said, no, sir, no way. But, you know, part of our role is to lead them for the day, make them feel comfortable, make them feel safe, so that therefore they can, you know, express their thoughts, you know, some of their fears, and just look at the topics. And the young people really appreciate that. We don't come in and tell them, you know, this is right, this is wrong, this is what you've got to do. It's a journey. Yes. And we hope that they will find that journey that's going to take them in that direction that'll give them the best chance they have of making that wonderful, stable relationship, because that's what they want. Yes. Yeah.
Well, everybody has a story. It has a beginning and a middle and an end, and they're kind of at the beginning towards the middle sort of stage.
Yeah.
Planning.
They are.
Okay, so young people today, are they willing to take the challenge to plan ahead, to think ahead?
A lot of them not. By the time we've been with them for a day, we've got them thinking a lot, because, you know, their brains are sort of going super fast. They've got hormones charging all around their system. You know, it's all a bit unsettling, and they've got a lot of things to sort out, you know. And there's a lot of pressures out there. We've spoken a little about the internet, the pressures of social media, the pressures to look cool, you know, conform with what's happening, expectations. And unfortunately out there's a lot of expectations of young people that they will be involved in sexual activity, regardless of, you know, whether they're quite ready for it or not. And one of the things, you know, if I remember this lovely time where we were in with a girls' school with a group of girls, and they were 15 coming up to 16, and at the end of the day a girl said, thank you so much. You know, I thought at 16 I had to go out and have sex because I was 16. And now I know I don't. Now I know I can wait. Now I know that I'm important and I'm precious, and it's not just something you give away to anybody. And that was just wonderful.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, one of the subtle pressures that comes today, you know, after the kids have finished school, moving up to university, and the graduation and prom come along, and the young man rents a limousine and takes her and buys her a corsage, and is really nice on the going, the coming home and the trip. There's an expectation that something might be performed in the car.
Well, yeah, that's an unfortunate thing that we often see, and we find actually there's a lot of pressure on girls, particularly if we're talking about oral sex and masturbation. There's a lot of pressure on young people about that, and, you know, the latest studies have come out and said, you know, this seems to be happening more. And in lots of ways that's sad, because it's expressing a sexuality in a way that is not so affirming to both parties taking place. You know, there's one thing important that we speak to, particularly with our boys, is the fact that masturbation's promoted a whole lot out there in the general media. Now, we'd like to present a different view and say to them, masturbation is certainly about exploring yourself, and it's certainly about stimulating yourself. And yes, you can learn a lot, and yes, it can be pleasurable for a moment. And the desire for it, particularly while you're young, can be quite normal. But if you get into a habit of that, and it's the only way you know how to express yourself sexually, when you get into a relationship, most important thing about a relationship is the other person. We say to them, if you want to be a great lover, you have to know how to relate to the other person, and the other person has to be the most important person in that intimacy. And if you've spent your whole time focusing on yourself and not understanding that giving, you're not going to make a great lover.
Yes.
Yeah.
So the I, me and myself culture, which is predominant today, this is an opportunity to learn about the opposite sex in a way that a lasting relationship is possible.
That's right, yes. Yeah. So, and the boys, particularly when we talk to them about that, going, hang on, this is something entirely different. But you can see that they can, an understanding of what it is that's available for them to behave in such a way, and but they've got this goal where they want to meet that great woman and marry her and be a great lover, and maybe the two don't meet, and so that's very challenging for them. You sort of sometimes feel like you've taken their ice cream away, because they go, and they've said to us, or they've said to me, "You mean, miss, I have to stop?" And I go, well, it's your choice, but if you want that goal, you have to learn to master yourself. And we all have urges, and we have to learn to master them.
So self-control and consequences are thought about probably first time for a long time.
Sometimes, yeah, you feel like that. And it's not that I blame the schools or anything like that, because it's not the place of schools to be doing that. In lots of ways, it's the place of parents and community to challenge, their child, their young person, about how they behave and how they think. But it's not always an easy conversation to have.
No, it's not. And usually information used to be picked up, as we said, behind the shelter shed. Now it's just out there on the internet. So here we are, loving for life. I love the term and the phrase. Do you operate in different states? What's happening? Where's the future?
Well, Loving for Life is, we work as a team, because if we go into a school and take a whole day seminar, we need to take a team of people, because we like to work with a small group of students. We're in Perth. They're a big program in Perth, not so big in Melbourne, and have just recently been to New Zealand, where they're looking at taking and training teams over there. So yeah, always looking for young people to join us. There's never enough, people out there in lots of ways. The more people we had, the more work we could do.
Well, thank you, Lisa. Loving for Life is a wonderful challenge.
Thank you.
You have been watching Support Life, and that's all for our program today. Join us again next week. Goodbye.